Hey everyone, it is day 12 of this 30-day challenge. And so today's Friday. Today is my day off. I take Fridays and Saturdays off typically. And so today's one of my days off. And I work part. Hey, look at that! You're on! Yay! You got me on live. So, hey Miranda. So Aunt Barbara has been trying to catch me live. And so she's like, every time that I'm on, I keep messaging you, everybody else talks to you, or you keep saying hi to everybody else and talking to them, but then you don't answer me. And that's because she was catching me on the replays. And so today she's caught me on live, but I purposely tagged her. We actually had lunch today when she stopped in, and I really enjoyed being able to spend some time with her today. And so, so it's actually kind of cool. I got her on live. Yay! Woo, woo, woo. So I'm really super excited. So anyway, on that note, so today's our 30-day, or so today is day 12. Hey Dan. And so today's prompt is about I did too, love you and I'm happy. Yay! So today's prompt is about being thankful for your parents or caregivers when you were younger. And so I wanted to be able to, one of the things that's kind of interesting in our life is, in my life, I shouldn't say ours, because I don't know who else that applies to necessarily, because it does for me, but not necessarily for anyone else in my family. But one of the things that I was that I'm very grateful for is that I have a very large family, very large extended family. And so as much as my parents played a role in bringing me into this world and raising me, one of the things that I am extremely grateful for, though, is the other people that have actually been in my life, so other caregivers. And not necessarily that I lived with them necessarily, but they played huge roles, and they played huge roles in my life. And so I wanted to be able to acknowledge them. And so that is kind of who it is that I want to be able to bring light to in for this prompt for today. So I've had a lot of opportunities to be able to spend lots of time with my grandmother. So my so my grandmother on my dad's side. So so we've got ma mère and ma mère. So I've got ma mère, and so that is on dad's side. And so growing up, before we moved from Timmins, is that I spent tons and tons and tons of time at my grandmother's. And so I was able to walk from school, go to her house if I needed to or wanted to. I spent a lot of time with her. My aunt is, she's my dad's youngest sister, and so we're very close in age. And so we got to, so I spent a lot of time with her, and my cousin is 10 months, is 4 months younger than me, or older than me. And so the three of us actually did a lot of things together, spent a lot of time together, spent a lot of time at my grandmother's, and so played a huge role in my upbringing, played a huge role, and probably me more than my sisters, because it would be the three of us that actually spent a lot of time at my grandmother's. And so when we moved from Timmins to New Liskeard, that was really tough because I couldn't walk to my grandmother's. I didn't have that same connection, and I'm only 10, so it's not like I could pick up the phone and call long distance. So so that was huge adjustment for me to move, and because my grandmother played a huge role. My grandmother called often, so I had the opportunity to be able to talk to her. So that part there was really good. And then when I got older and had my own phone, not cell phone, because back then we didn't have cell phones like that we do now. easily accessible other than those great big huge bag phones. But we did, so when I got my own phone and had my own plan and allowed me to be able to call long distance, I called my grandmother quite regularly. And when things were going on or things were happening, it was typically my grandmother that I actually called and asked questions about, like, what do I do here, or this is what's going on in my life, whatever it was that was going on. And she was definitely she definitely played a huge role and impact in my life. And she's passed away for several years now. But one of the things is that, so I was 19, I think I was in and around 19, and I moved to North Bay. So I moved to North Bay. I had finished my training to be a legal secretary, and so I applied for where I was actually doing my training. They didn't have any positions, and so I actually applied for jobs in North Bay, because that's my grandmother had moved to North Bay kind of in between. And so I moved to North Bay, and I lived with my grandmother for probably a good, almost a year actually. It wasn't a full year though, but almost a year, I think probably about 9 months. So as a young adult, I actually got this time to be able to spend, hi Carol, I got to spend time and live with my grandmother. So again, she played a huge role in my life so from my younger years to, so from up until 10, up to the age of 10, and then from 18 until she passed, she played a huge role in my life. And so very thankful for all the time that I actually got to spend with her. I lived in North Bay for about 3 years, so got to spend a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather, and really had a very strong attachment to both of them. And so this is my my grandmother's second husband, and so I got to spend a lot of time with both of them and really enjoyed that time, and very grateful that I was actually able to have that time with them as well. And then so that's one of the people that were in my life that have played a huge role in terms of caregivers from when I was younger. And then the other and then I've had some others that were, so my mom has a very large family. So does my dad. My dad has, it's a family of 7, but mom had a family of 13 kids. And so there was a lot of connections with some of the younger siblings. Mom was the oldest of all of the siblings, and then and I was the oldest grandchild of all the siblings, or of all the siblings, I guess, the oldest grandchild. And so, and one of the things that my mom pointed out that I didn't realize is that I was also the oldest great grandchild in my mom's side of the family. So it's actually kind of cool. I didn't realize that though, because I assumed that there was some other cousins that had grandchildren, but apparently it wasn't. I was the first great grandchild, and so. Because I wasn't connecting some of the age changes. So some of my mom's cousins, they're my age or in and around my age. So I was thinking that they would be great grandchildren, but they weren't. They were my mom's cousins. So they're my second cousins. So, so that kind of was really interesting realization when that happened. And so, but when I was younger, so when I was younger, I got to spend a lot of time with a lot of different family members, and because we were a large family, and so my one uncle, I spent a lot of time with him, and his name is so he's my Uncle Mike, and so he has 2 young girls, and so I spent a lot of time babysitting them when I was younger, and so I got to spend a lot of time with them, and so my Uncle Mike and my Aunt Janet, and the 2 of them, so like that was some really nice connections that I was able to have. I got to spend time with really good, cool time with my cousins, and so the 2 of them are pretty special. Like, not that my other cousins aren't, because we spent a lot of time out at my grandparents, at my mom's parents. But that was one of the things, is that I got to spend a lot of time with them. So Uncle Mike played a huge role, and he passed away a couple years ago. And so so that's another loss. I'm gonna try and do this without crying. Probably not though, because when I kind of thought back about it, it's like a lot of those ones that I had those strong connections with, that played huge roles in my life, they some of them have passed on. So and so that was my Uncle Mike, and my Aunt Janet had passed years and years and years before that, but Mom's brother, Uncle Mike is Mom's brother, so got to spend some time with them, a lot of time with them when I was younger. And then we had, and then again, because I was the oldest, and then we had the younger siblings to my mom. So my Uncle Dan and my Uncle Andy, and then my Tante Marie and my Tante Muriel, and then Claude and Jocelyn. So Claude and Jocelyn are actually both younger than me, and so they were both born after I was born. So Claude was born, I was born in April, so he's 11 months younger than me, and then Joss, I think, is 3 years younger than me. So just kind of interesting in terms of the dynamics. But I spent a lot of time with, so Uncle Dan and Uncle Andy were a little bit older, but we spent some time because they were still living at home when I was younger. And then, but I spent a lot of time with Marie and Muriel. And so so I spent a lot of time with them, and that was, so again, they had huge impacts and connections, because I would hang out with them as opposed to hanging out with the younger ones, and we would do things together, and that was kind of cool. And then as I got older, I maintained a really strong relationship with my Aunt Marie May, and so would come and spend a lot of time with her. And so like that was like in my 20s, and so we did a lot of different things together. She had kids, and so got to spend some time with them when they were little. But then as they got older, then I stopped going to visit as often, and then that kind of things kind of shifted and changed some more. And then and like I said, I was living in North Bay, and so spent a lot of time in North Bay. Well, I lived there for 3 years, but I actually got to spend a lot of time with Aunt Barb and Uncle Dan. Told you I'm not going to do that, but got to spend a lot of time with Uncle Dan, who passed away, and Uncle Dan and Aunt Barb, and they played a huge role in those 3 years. And a few years after, like I didn't go and visit as often, but I tried to visit a little bit a couple years after that. And then the internet's great because I was able to connect with them again more. And give me a second. That was triggered by spending some time with Aunt Barb. Spending some time with Aunt Barb today. So, hey Vanessa, and I loved you too, and I still love you guys. But Uncle Dan has passed away, so and then you always have those regrets of not having spent enough time with them. And yeah, so anyway, let's get back to the to the whole thankfulness, right? So, but I am very thankful for that time that I actually got to spend with them. And but they've played huge impact, or have had huge impact on my life, and strong impact and connection, and got to do a lot of things with these aunts and uncles and my grandmother who played huge significant roles in my life. And so then when my my grandfather on my mom's side had passed away, and then I don't remember how many more years after that before she had actually moved in and lived with my aunt Muriel and Uncle Dan. And so I spent a lot of time with them. I would go to Timmins as often as I possibly could. I tried to go at least once a month, and I think I tried to go a little bit more often than that as well. And especially when she was starting to get more and more weak and more sick. And so got to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, but also had a lot of time with Uncle Dan and Aunt Mer. So was able to form another really strong connection with the two of them as well. And so the big joke is that Aunt Muriel has the youngest, and it's not a joke, it's actually true, but like it was when Julie was really little. It was, so my grandmother would be there, and it would be because Julie and my mare shared a room. And so Julie would say, well, she's my mare, and it's like, no, she was my mare first. And so it was always the laughing joke was the fact that she was the oldest, I was the oldest, and she was the youngest. So but that was actually kind of cool. But I got to spend a lot of time with them. And so these people that actually come into your life, and even though that they're family, but you create those connections and you create those bonds with them, and they become part of your caregiving, part of your caregivers. So I was thinking about it on the drive back from Earlton today when I had lunch with Aunt Barb, is that Uncle Dan's the one that helped me get my license. So because I had got my, back then, it was called our 365s for those of you who are younger that are going like, what? So it's your beginners, so it's your G1s. And so it was called the 365. So we would have, so I did that when I was 16. And then just for different reasons and different things that were going on, I ended up not getting my my license. And then and so then when I moved to North Bay and I took the driving school, and so I needed to learn and practice to drive, and Uncle Dan took me driving. And so he's the one that actually helped me get my license. And so so for all of you that go, oh my God, it's Uncle Dan's fault. So, but I got to spend, he's the one actually took me and did that. And so like, again, that's that caregiver role, right? So, hey Lynn, how's it going? And so, yeah, it's just being able to spend those extra times. And like I said, like, although, so the prompt was about your parents or your caregivers, though for some people, caregivers those are the ones that end up looking after you instead of your parents entirely for different reasons. And that wasn't the case. I didn't have anybody that just took care of me for different reasons, but I had all these people that played huge, have had huge impact in my life, and have taken on that caregiver role without like me just moving in with them kind of thing, other than my grandmother. But it was just those, yeah, so it's just kind of interesting when I actually thought about it and thought about how was I going to answer that question. And like I said, I wasn't planning on crying. And I didn't for the other aunts and uncles who passed away. I mean, for the other people who've passed away, but I did for Uncle Dan. But like I said, that was probably triggered from having had lunch with Aunt Barb today. So, and then, like I said, thinking about the fact that he's the one that helped me get my license as I was driving back. And so it was just really cool. And I was, yeah, so as much as, so even though the prompt is about being grateful for our parents or our caregivers, I am grateful for that time that I got to spend with my cousin Kiera and my Aunt Barb, and we had lunch with my mom and with my sister and her husband. And so, yeah, so I'm thankful for those. I'm thankful for being able to do that, and me and my blubbering tears. So, so do you guys have people that have been in your life that kind of fit and fall under that caregiver role? Curious. Just wondering whether or not that's just me or if that's because I come from a large family. But like I said, it was actually kind of cool. It was kind of cool to be able to spend these times with my my aunts and uncles who are around the same ages as I am. Because I was the oldest the oldest grandchild, and like as I said earlier, is that I discovered that I'm the oldest great grandchild too. So, so that was actually kind of cool because one of the things that my mom had pointed out just recently is that my great grandfather had made it, and he had made it for me, and some of the other aunts and uncles were actually a little bit jealous. It's like, well, what about us? What about us? But it was because I was the first, and so he made the cradle for me. So it was actually kind of cool. And a lot of kids use that cradle until it kind of just got lost in the shuffles. Then it wasn't anything super fancy. It was just a cradle, and he had made it out of plywood, but it was quite sturdy, and probably doesn't meet CAS regulations at this age or now, just because of all the different regulations. But it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. But yeah, so just kind of cool. So anyway, interested to hear what it is that your experiences. So anyway, I'll be back tomorrow, and hopefully without tears. But again, I don't know what the prompts are from one day to the next. So so we'll see what tomorrow brings. Anyway, bye for now. Love you, Aunt Barb. Glad that you're actually able to catch me on live.